same format. We're going to take a few minutes to highlight the kind of collective work that was done by there were 7 capstone students, 3 were local, and 4 lived outside the metro area, 1 as far away as Maine. And I'll just say one thing about the one student from Maine. He was very resourceful. He figured out that he could get a survey distributed by calling veterinarians in Apache Junction and handing them surveys, or talking to them over the phone and getting them to agree to hand out surveys to their customers who came in for service. And then he collected those surveys, or the vet collected the surveys and sent them back up to my student in Maine who analyzed them. So 2 of the locals met with Liz and me, and we toured the 3 potential sites for the Off-Leash dog park. I don't know whether Nick was with us or not on that trip. Yeah, okay, and Nick. So here were some sample research questions. Is there any interest in the city business community for a public-private partnership? This was a paper where many surveys went out to businesses and 0 response rate. So that gives you a hint as to maybe what, well, there were 2 possible explanations. One is we should have sent out a different survey, or secondly, we should have maybe asked different questions. I'm not sure what. We may have to try that again. So how have other comparable cities raised funds to finance the construction and maintenance of the Off-Leash Dog Park? And that's a project that Katie will address in her presentation. She's done some really excellent research from other communities, much like what was done in the last presentation. What are the sources of funding in 4 nearby cities? Does the proximity to an off-leash dog park increase exercise in dog owners? Some of the methods that were used: cost-benefit analysis, SWOT analysis. We saw an earlier example of what that strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. A survey of dog owners in the city of Apache Junctions, and interviews with city officials in neighboring cities. And here are some of the key findings from these 6 papers other than Katie's. Local dog owners most wanted a park with adequate water and shade. Local dog owners also wanted a well-maintained park. They'd be willing to pay a modest annual fee. And the city of Phoenix, as an example of one of the cases in one of the students' papers, was successfully using a mini grant program to assist the development of small projects. Some sample recommendations: size should be a minimum of a ½ acre for large breed dogs, $1/4 acre for small breed dogs. And businesses like PetSmart or Petco, who fund, PetSmart, I believe, funds a park in Phoenix, could be a major source of funding. According to a study and a literature review, a dog training station is popular and functional for a dog park. I'm not sure what a dog training station is, but maybe Katie can add that, or maybe Liz. And the city of Apache Junction should utilize qualitative feedback by placing it on the agenda of a city council meeting, advertise on social media, and open a phone line for residents to call in to provide opinions. Now I'll turn it over to Katie, and she is going to go through her presentation. Here you go.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. So, like Dr. Goggins said, my name is Katie Brewer. I was one of the students who did an analysis and comparative benchmarking study on what was supposed to be 4 other cities, but ended up being 3 due to some issues that I'll go into here momentarily. So the kick point I wanted to start off on was what were the goals and objectives of this study, which started off with a couple of research questions I wanted to know the answers to personally. First one was, what are the necessary features and key elements of a successful community off-leash dog park? How did other Arizona cities locate the resources to build their off-leash facilities? And then how can Apache Junction apply different fundraising strategies to raise the resources to construct its own dog park? My objectives, of course, were to conduct a comparative analysis of successful dog parks throughout Arizona cities near Apache Junction. Originally, I was going to look at the city of Tempe, and then I did also look at Mesa, Gilbert, and Chandler. Unfortunately, the city of Tempe Parks and Recreation officials were a little bit unresponsive to some of my questions, so due to that and a couple timeliness issues, I went ahead and just stuck with the 3 other cities. And then out of all of this, I wanted to be able to propose a formal recommendation of how a cost-effective off-leash facility could be built in Apache Junction. Unfortunately, I was not one of the students that was able to accompany Dr. Goggin to Apache Junction to actually visit the sites. So all of these are very theoretical and based off the minimal knowledge I have of city documents that I've seen of the different proposed sites at Prospector Park, Silly Mountain, and the site across the street from City Hall. So in my literature review, I basically went over a history of off-leash dog facilities, very extensive, but they mainly started popping up in the 1960s. People wanted to start exercising more with their dogs. People started realizing that dog parks sort of became a community hub to socialize with their neighbors, make new acquaintances, and also receive information on different services that are applicable for pet owners, such as veterinary services, grooming services, all of these that actually were pretty big components of the dog parks that I managed to visit. I also looked at different barriers and risks. One of these was obviously community opinion. People that don't own dogs tend to understand that dogs are very loud. They bark. They are everywhere. So that was one of the things to consider also is what would community response to this look like, especially to those who are not dog owners or dog lovers. So like I said before, I looked at the 3 main cities, and I looked at 2 dog parks in each facility, or in each city. Cosmo Dog Park and Crossroads Park in Gilbert, Countryside and Quail Run Park in Mesa, and Nozomi and Shawnee Park in Chandler. I spent about 30 minutes at each dog park, so that equated to about 3 hours in total. I utilized a matrix with different descriptors that I borrowed from Lee Sheckley and Huang. Very, very relevant. It looked at different components of the dog park, such as the park size, different amenities such as shading, water resources, and as well as added a component to look at the different fundraising strategies that they used. That was supplemented with some informal email communications with different city parks and recreation officials who were able to answer some of my questions that weren't more readily available online in my research. So overall, what I did find, this is my longer one, is that okay? Okay, so basically I started off at Cosmo Dog Park. This is the newest dog park. It opened in 2007. It was about 2 acres. It was also the largest in that it had 4 separately fenced areas. 3 were for active dogs and 1 was for timid dogs. This actually ended up being the most popular dog park that I visited. According to the Town of Gilbert website, it has over 600,000 visitors in a year. Many of them come from outside of the city, myself included. My dog and I enjoyed it very much. As you can see, it has a dog beach and lake area for dogs to splash around in, along with other water resources such as double drinking fountains for dogs and their owners, as well as a doggy shower station, which I had never seen before, but it helps wash off all bacteria that they can gather from the lake. Crossroads Dog Park, on the other hand, was probably the least popular dog park I visited. We were the only ones in there. That's my dog, Minnie. It was comfortably small, 1 acre. Obviously, the active dog area was much bigger than the timid dog area. It also probably had the best example of being an information hub about different dog services and community events offered throughout the city of Gilbert. Countryside Dog Park opened in 2010, so actually, this is the most recently opened. It's about 1.2 acres large, similar to Crossroads. It also has 2 separately fenced areas for active and timid dogs. And it was actually created part of a doggy do's and doggy don'ts campaign that the city of Mesa put on. Quail Run Dog Park, the other dog park in Mesa, opened in 2001, about 1.5 acres large, again, 2 separately fenced areas. And funding was found because it was built as part of the city's park master plan. So it was already budgeted for. There were no separate costs for development or construction. As you can kind of see in the picture, it utilized a lot of turf, but it also had kind of this rocky area. It's not in the picture, but this was one of the parks that actually had a kiddie pool for dogs, as well as a lot of buckets placed around the park for easily accessible water for hydration purposes. Nozomi Dog Park in Chandler opened in 2004, less than an acre large. It is very small and is also an extension of a community park. We were there on a day where there was a big baseball tournament going on, so there were actually a couple people with their dogs in there that had children participating in the tournament. Chandler is interesting because this was the only city I found with dog parks that instead of having a separate area for active and timid dogs, rather for timid dogs, they had an agility training area, which might be the training areas you were mentioning, Dr. Goggin, is that they had a lot of but they have ladders, they had a seesaw, they had different tunnels the dogs could run through. Similar to equestrians who jump their horses, they had little poles that they could train their dogs to jump over. And then an interesting side note is that Nozomi Park is often used for obedience classes and police canine training. Shawnee Dog Park opened in 2000. It was by far the biggest park at over 2.2 acres. Similar to Nozomi, also had two separately fenced areas. In the middle there, you can see in the picture, is the agility training area. Had much of the same materials as offered before. And also had a dog waste station and plastic bag recycling program, which allows City of Chandler residents to bring their reusable shopping bags to use for picking up dog waste, which I thought was pretty cool. So my findings, basically all the dog parks had similar features such as double gated system for entry and exit. They also had chain link perimeter fences of at least 5 feet tall, lighting for nighttime users, various water sources, including water fountains at the very least. Other parks went above and beyond and had obviously like the dog lake and everything. Areas for dog waste materials and receptacles, and also posted regulations and rules about appropriate dog park behavior. Of course, there were popularity differences among the dog parks, Cosmo being the most popular, with a woman I talked to had said that she had traveled 40 minutes to bring her dog there. Varied water resources for hydration and playing, use of kiddie pools, a dog beach and lake, or just simple water fountains and bowls for dogs to access. Fundraising strategies, the Cosmo Dog Park was built as part of a capital improvement plan. Countryside and Quail Run were budgeted for as part of the park master plan, and then Nozomi and Shawnee used park bond funds. My recommendations, the dog park has to be at least 1 acre in size, most likely near as an extension of a community park since that's where all the dog parks were built. Perimeter of the park should be at least 5 feet high with a double gated entrance and exit, and at least one area for active dogs and one area for timid dogs. You can have an area for agility if people in the community are really into that. Different recommendations of posted regulations. I won't go through all of them, but one of the most popular was an age minimum for dogs and children, as well as letting the owners know there was assumed responsibility and liability, as well as licensure, vaccination, and visible tag requirements for the dogs. Obviously, we're in Arizona. It gets really hot in the summertime. Even going at night can be really rough, so probably having some source of water, whether that's a fountain or if you want to go above and beyond, a dog lake would be pretty cool. Waste receptacles, and also lots of shading and seating. To fundraise, I would consider cost-saving actions on other projects, possibly looking into fundraising using park bonds or involving the community with minor fundraising initiatives just to kind of help with those minor development things, such as building infrastructure for like the dog waste like Chandler did, or getting a big community plan together to get people more involved and excited. This is my dog. I just wanted to show you how much fun she had. Cosmo was by far her favorite. It was probably also the most expensive. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was a pretty expensive park to build. But it also was the most popular and the most well-liked that I could tell. And that's it.